What's up, guys? Just in time for the Diamond Pro remix, we have a team starring none other than Dialga. So Dialga, this is a semi-stall team, and Dialga is very much the star. He puts the semi in semi-stalls. This is a semi-stall team, meaning it's a stall team, but with at least one major offensive component. And it kind of changes the mindset from just outlasting your opponent to outlasting your opponent until you get that opportunity to break them down with your offensive threat. And so that is basically how this team functions. It's a win condition, and Dialga is very good at what it does. And it's very cool and unique and not very commonly seen. I mean, you usually just see it on low ladder teams like defensive Dialga, so it's really not common. And this team in particular took to top 10, had a lot of fun doing it. And I want to talk about how I got to this point. So for one thing, I was tired of playing just pure stall, pure defense, so I wanted to try and incorporate offense. And I find that the better you get at team building, the easier it is to find those places where you can fit the things you want, like a little bit of offense. And there's quite a few defensive Pokemon that can fulfill their defensive niche while still being an offensive presence. So a couple like Dialga, for example, but also Ho-Oh and Dustmane, just to name a few. And so I was trying to sort of diversify the answers I had to certain offensive threats. And in doing so, I was coming through the Ubers tier, the OU tier, just analyzing or looking at my options, seeing if I could find new answers that I hadn't thought of before. And so in Dialga's case, it has a very significant niche, one that is kind of hard to fill, and that is that it deals with Zekrom. And Zekrom's unique stab combination of electric and dragon really filters out a lot of otherwise very good defensive Pokemon that can deal with it. And so you usually have to resort to some unique or less overall Pokemon that aren't as good in general. So things like Tangrowth, other stuff like that. There's just not a lot of great, like, super good Uber Pokemon that are really have a lot of versatility that deal with Zekrom. And so Dialga deals with Zekrom. It doesn't really do much else. It helps fend off. The only other thing that I kind of like it for, especially on this team, is that it takes less than 50 from Scarf Darmanitan Icicle Crash. So, because this team is kind of weak to Darmanitan, so there's that. But yeah, that's what it does. But in this case, it's also going to be an offensive presence, an offensive sweeper. So let's dive into the team a little bit. So let me start with Dialga himself. So it has pretty cool. It's a bulk up scale shot sweeper with Iron Head and Substitute. So the idea here is that besides fulfilling its defensive role in dealing with Zekrom, and it does have wish support from Blissey to make that a little, or to give it a little more longevity. But I find that it does its job really well, and it has leftovers. So, but the idea here, your primary setup target is going to be Duskmane Necrozma. So with a team like this that is, it has surprise factor, pulling it out once in a while rather than using it over and over again is going to be better. I mean, that's just better in general, but especially for this team, because they see Dialga, they're usually, if they have like a balance core, for example, they're going to send in Duskmane Necrozma as the answer. And so that is basically a free turn for your Dialga. And so potentially 2 or 3 if it takes them too long to figure out what you're going to do. And that kind of allows you to it just makes it better it really takes advantage of the surprise factor and sets up on the opponent. And so it needs to set up on Duskmane. So defensive Duskmane runs, well, Morning Sun, Stealth Rock, Steel Stab, and then one coverage move, usually Thunder Wave, Knockoff, or Earthquake. And all three of those are going to be, either way, it's going to be setup fodder for this Dialga. So if it's Thunder Wave, you sub, and we have 88 speed EVs to outspeed it. Not only that, but also outspeed defensive Yveltal. But we outspeed it, the defensive sets, and so we ignore Thunder Wave, and then with bulk up, after one bulk up, we'll be taking less than 25% from Earthquake, and then we can sub safely and just go from there. So it does give you a lot of opportunities, especially when people aren't prepared for it. So it's really good, and it's surprisingly good at sweeping teams if it gets enough free turns. So this one has some attack investment. You can also do just full defense would be good as well. Actually, it could be necessary. I have a couple of copies of this team, so this might be a different EV spread, but you can use full defense, and you should be taking less than 25 from Yveltal as well. Defensive Yveltal is knockoff if you have enough defense. So really good. And then obviously Eternitis doesn't really want to switch into it. And after one scale shot, you're going to be outspeeding it too. So that's the idea. You wait for your opportunity to set up with Dialga. So really cool. So where do we go from there? We have our Zekrom answer. Then we just need to fill out everything else. So Tyranitar is a standalone answer to Calyrex Shadow, meaning that if you're just using Yveltal, you're prone to being worn down after being tricked and losing your boots and having a choice scarf. So Tyranitar is a little more robust against Calyrex Shadow, and there's actually room to play around with the EVs a lot, but I really hadn't done that much, hadn't really found or thought of a reason to do that. So it's just full special defense, and then support set with rest for longevity, and then Focus Sash because it gives it a little more utility versus hyper offense and surprising them with Sash. So it can be useful, and it can survive like Mewtwo Focus Blast, for example. It's okay, and it definitely could be changed out. And then next we have Ho-Oh. So Ho-Oh is it does a couple things. One, it deals with Xerneas. It's a primary function. So I have my patented Ho-Oh spread here. It's just standard Ho-Oh with 20 speed EVs to outspeed Calyrex Ice and anything else that goes 20-20 to outspeed Paralyzed Calyrex. And that 21 is just speed creep on those guys. So you could even add 22 if you want for some more speed creep. Yeah, and then Sacred Fire, Thunder Wave, Whirlwind, Defog. You could swap Thunder Wave for Brave Bird for some more offense, some more pressure. I've been playing that a lot, but Thunder Wave facilitates Dialga more. Same thing with Tyranitar. He has Thunder Wave as well. She's going to facilitate Dialga's sweeping potential. So yeah. All right, next we got Zygarde. So this Zygarde in and of itself is noteworthy because it's not something that you see, a defensive Zygarde with a niche that this has. So what do I mean? It deals with Double Dance Groudon. And I was trying to find like reliable answers to Groudon that weren't weak to its Fire Stab. So unlike, say, Buzzwole or Tangrowth, who get destroyed by fire moves, Overheat, for example, Zygarde's not weak to its coverage. So that's why I like it a lot. And at first glance, and even when I first started using this, it was a little it took me a while to figure out, but basically you switch into Groudon, and if it Swords Dances, then you haze. If it Rock Polishes, you haze. If it hits you, then that's fine because number one, it's not doing that much damage, and it's gonna proc your complete form, and then you get to fire off a glare against the opponent. So, but what's necessary to do that is this speed here. It's gonna be you know what? I'll just make a video about this because I have a couple of Groudon answers that I think are pretty cool. But the main point is that the speed is going to outspeed Adamant Groudon, which it pretty much always is, which is going to allow you to do this. And then some special defense for some help against mainly Landorus, who's this team is not very robust against, so helps a little bit there. All right, so 1,000 waves you could do 1,000 arrows as well, but 1,000 waves can be useful against stall teams like trapping and PP stalling. So between Glare and Haze, they both have 48 PP, so that gives you a lot of trapping potential. And then of course Rest. So that it mainly deals with Groudon. Also Ho-Oh helps against Calyrex. Like say your Tyranitar is tricked, then you can start switching in a Ho-Oh against it. Deals with Xerneas, helps against Calyrex Ice, helps against Darmanitan. There's a lot of things. I kind of glossed over it way too quickly. And then Tyranitar helps against anything that doesn't have fighting or ground fighting or ground coverage. So things like Calyrex or Kyurem Ice helps a lot against too. So I really like Tyranitar. Been using it a lot. And then Zygarde can help against Marshadow without Ice Punch. And it basically, but its main niches are that it deals with Groudon and it deals with Decimated Necrozma almost single-handedly because it's so bulky, and a lot of times one or the other is defensive. So it's really, really good at that. Awesome Pokemon. All right. This guy is really freaking cool. So I've been using Choice Scarf Eternitis a lot. The reason it's using Choice Scarf is to make it not only better against stalling out Marshadow with Life Orb, but also it kind of functions as like a pseudo heavy duty boots against hyper offense teams with Taunt Yveltal. But even if they knock it off, you still have Tyranitar, so they would have to have like a Taunt Yveltal with U-turn and like knockoff. So and you know, on hyper offense, do they really want to use U-turn? Not really. So it does its job pretty well at staving off Yveltal, even without special defense investment, just HP. And it also deals with Marshadow. But not only that, it deals with Urshifu very well, and Dracovish. And if you're not familiar, Eternitis, the defensive sets usually run max special defense to help against like specially offensive Yveltal, but mainly Kyogre. So it is pretty unique to see one that's defensive like this. It has everything about this Eternitis is cool. So Draco Meteor, the extra power helps me OHKO things, especially because I'm a Scarfer. I want to be able to drop things in one hit. So Draco Meteor allows me to do that. Toxic Spikes, I've really come to like. Not necessarily because, well, mainly because a lot of bad teams don't have poison types, so it kind of filters. Because one thing one weakness of Stall is that even like bad offensive teams, like, you know, just people who are unfamiliar with the metagame, they use random stuff. Stall teams are kind of vulnerable against things with really random stuff because they're entirely tailored towards the metagame and their defensive you know, you're building the team around the metagame. So these really random teams that branch far away from the metagame, I think take advantage of defensive teams more than offensive, because good offensive teams are going to clean up bad offensive teams really easily. It's not really a disadvantage, but for a stall team, the whole surprise factor and not knowing what your opponent is going to do, not knowing what kind of coverage it has, or not being prepared for that type of coverage is really all it takes to break through a stall team. So anyway, I don't know where I was going, but to Scarf gives you some utility when you're in those really tight situations. You can just Scarf Draco Meteor to KO something by surprise. So that's been really good and saved me a lot. And then Dragon Tail is optional, definitely, but it's supposed to force Toxic Spike poison So it's okay, and it phases out Kyogre too, I guess. But yeah, really cool. Enough speed to outspeed Yveltal. Very important because you don't want to be blocked, or you want to be faster than it so you don't get taunted without being able to recover first. Alright, next we have Blissey, fully specially defensive utility umbrella. This is the main Kyogre answer, or the only one really, and wish support for, well, we got 2 resting mons and a third with no rest, so wish support is really going to help enable us to allow us to do that, to not have very much reliable recovery, so to speak. And then confide for Xerneas and Kyogre, stalling out Geomancy and Calm Mind goes through substitute, and then aromatherapy to wake up the rest users. So that's primarily it, yeah. And then of course we talked about Dialga. So that's team, semi-stall team. And let's get into, I have one replay for you guys. So this guy is, well, he's just straight up better than me. I mean, he's has multiple accounts like at the top of the ladder. He's very good. And I fought him a lot, and I won a handful of games. So this game, well, let's look at the team preview, because that's very important, and it's where you formulate a lot of your game plan. So just to put this sort of preview into context, especially for those of you who aren't familiar with like high level Uber's gameplay, Gen 8 post Zacian Hero ban. So my Tyranitar is for his Calyrex. My Ho-Oh is going to help with his Calyrex and his Xerneas, potentially his Yveltal, potentially his Eternitis. That's another application of Ho-Oh, especially if you don't have Blissey, is that if the Eternitis uses Meteor Beam, after it Meteor Beams, I switch in Ho-Oh and then I can phase it out, and I don't get 2-hit KO'd by like Dynamax Cannon. Also, Ho-Oh is the defogger for the team. So one thing I've learned kind of about defogging is that the main reason you really need a defogger is because of spikes, especially on a defensive team. That's mainly it. Like, if Pokemon only ever had Stealth Rocks, then you could build your teams just to, deal with it, and you wouldn't even need a defogger. But you need a defogger because of spikes. That's mainly why. And it's the best defogger for Ferrothorn, who's the main spike user, so yeah. So anyway, he's defogger, so he'll come in on Necrozma after I scouted it to see what kind of set it's running, because you don't want to get KO'd by Stone Edge. And then Dialga is for his Zekrom. And then also Eternitis can actually deal with Zekrom if he plays, or if he doesn't play around it, which is a lot of times unlikely because they don't expect Scarf or Draco Meteor or physically defensive. So this team could actually probably function without a dedicated Dialga answer between Zygarde and Eternitis and Tyranitar, but Dialga just really solidifies it. So that's that. And then Zygarde would be the Decimated Necrozma answer if it's offensive, and kind of helps against physical Yveltal, and kind of helps against Zekrom in a pinch. And then Eternitis deals with his Yveltal, and in my case also helps against Zekrom. Yeah, that's mainly it. And then Blissey helps with Xerneas, Eternitis. Yeah, but anyway, my main answer to Xerneas, because Xerneas is probably the scariest thing, is Ho-Oh. So I have to keep it healthy, or else I'm going to have to rely on Blissey, which can be a shaky thing because a couple reasons. Number one, Xerneas coverage. If it has Psy Shock, it's going to break through this variant because it's specially defensive and has no defense investment. So it's going to destroy Blissey. Or if it's like a physical, like Bandit set, like those random things, it would break through it as well. So it is a little shaky of answer. And then also it's prone to crits because you're in that confide loop. So it's not a really ideal answer to Xerneas in general, but it does a lot of the time. It is satisfactory for dealing with it. But yeah, a little side note there. But it's mainly Ho-Oh. I want to get in there and use Whirlwind on the first Geomancy and go from there. But it deals with Eternitis. If it's like Meteor Beam, that's the main thing. Yeah, anyway, let's get into the game. Now that I've talked about all that. Alright, so he's leading Dustmane and Necrozma. Gets off Stealth Rocks. Anyway, it's a long game. I'm going to leave it in the description. But I'm kind of just playing like, trying to preserve my defensive Pokemon. I'm thinking a lot about his Xerneas and his Zekrom the whole game. This isn't the longest game ever, but I'm just going to... Sorry. Skip forward. Hey, let's go to turn 50. Alright. So, the main thing I wanted to show through this game is Dialga. Well, he's showing off his defensive utility and his offensive utility as well, which actually helps me close out the game. So, okay, here comes the Zekrom. So now, responding with my Dialga. He's going to DD, and let's see how much this does. Only 36%. Granted, he's not Life Orb, but this is also... I think this is the offensive set with the attack investment. So yeah, I'm just kind of setting up on this, and I'm going to threaten it out soon. Yeah, so it's taking a lot of damage here, and unfortunately, it's only a 2-shot. Otherwise, it'd be dead, but... Wow, it's still faster. Well, yeah, of course. Okay, so... Yeah, and you can see it's kind of snowballing from here. I mean, do I get a flinch here? Yeah, I do. Okay, so that's just his Zekrom is dead. So even if I had died, Dialga's sort of already served his purpose. And here I just predict Sucker Punch, keep bulking up. Yeah, and he's kind of done from there. So yeah, that's sort of what it's supposed to do, and I have a lot of replays and clips of this, and I'm gonna probably put some links at the bottom of this so that you guys can check out, including some of my ladder games and perhaps some replays of just Dialga doing his thing. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it informative, and thanks for watching.